So I wanted to show you what the 20 amps actually were gonna be that were in this ToneHub pack. This is my main control room where I do all my guitar tracking. This is the mega amp wall, and everything is hooked up to a patch bay that I patch into those 10 cabs that you'll see shortly. And I'll just kind of go through one by one, show you why I have a certain amp, what I like it for, and why it's in the pack. Starting with the Bogner Uberschall, which is one of my favorite modern high gain amps. A very cool, dry but low end heavy, high distorted tone. Pretty cool clean channel too. Usually use it for heavy stuff because it's called the Uberschall, that's what it's for. Secondly, the Driftwood Purple Nightmare. Sort of a play on what I like about dual Rex. Maybe a little better, cleaned up a bit. Very interesting rumble and sharp knobs to dial in depth and presence on that. Kind of gives you like a unique flavor. A lot of guys who have used this now just swear by this amp, and for good reason. It's a very cool, modern, heavy amp. Below that is the Omega Ampworks Granifier. This is like a no frills, really unique sounding, heavy distortion. If you're a fan of stuff like Slipknot, that's a pretty common, dry but really aggressive guitar tone. And the voicings on it are very expressive, very simple, like I said, just like 5 knobs to really dial your tone in, but it gives you this really, really cool character that I can't really get out of a lot of other amps. That's why it's here. Moving over here, 5153 EL34, pretty classic amp. It's my favorite of the new 5153 series. I like the EL34 tubes in it. Mids are a little cleaner. That's pretty much it. If you're watching this, you probably know what that sounds like and why it's in this room, so I don't think we have to talk about it too much. Below that is the Diesel Herbert. This is maybe the heaviest amp I have as far as like the ability to dial in tight sub and chuggy metal rhythm guitar tones. It really, really shines. It's quickly become one of my favorite amps to use on modern recordings. It also has a good mid-gain and clean channel on it too. It's a very versatile amp in the same sense. Diesel makes great amps, and that's probably my favorite one of theirs. Another really versatile amp below that is the Mesa Boogie Triple Crown. This has made its way onto a lot of my records, again, because of how versatile it is. The ability to dial in anything from clean to semi-distorted tones, has a really well-voiced presence knob, and the way the master volume works on that amp, where you can select different output wattages right on the front. It's really easy to drive the tubes and drive the output sections in cool ways. And yeah, it's a really fun amp to play through. Definitely like a player's amp, and one that I really like to use. Down here is the PRS Archon, probably one of the top modern amps that have come out in the past 5 to 10 years when it comes to heavy, high gain metal tones. Really thick, high saturated amp, a really, really nice clean channel too. Super sparkly, the bright switch on it gives you a lot of tonal variety, and it's definitely been a favorite in here from a lot of guitarists. That's been on about 20 or 30 records by now probably, and an amp that I like. Usually wins shootouts, you know. Below that is a newer amp I just picked up from Dover. It's the DA50, it's 50 watt, just shredders amp. Great for thrash tones. Probably the most expressive master volume amp out of anything I have, where as you crank the amp, you can really hear the tones change, just like classic Marshall British style amps do. From the UK, so it's a part of that lineage, but I think it goes a little further, and it's really fun to play with, really cool to dial shreddy tones with, and a really unique amp too. So for me, that was easy to get into the pack. Moving over to here, some of my more like hard rock amps. The Freeman JJ100. This is Jerry Cantrell's signature amp. If you're a fan of Alice in Chains, you'll probably love the tones you get from this. Very similar to the 800 style Marshall heads, but it's dialed a little more for his voicing and playing and stuff. I think you can go a little further with the master volume down, which can be nice in some tracking environments, but it's just got a really thick, heavy hard rock tone, and with the right pedal, it can cross into metal territory very easily. Really nice clean channel on that too. That can be very dark or very bright with the voicing switch on it. So it's a super usable head for a lot of things, and one of my favorites for that style of music for sure. Below that is classic JCM 800. I've had this amp for a long time. Again, if you're watching this, you probably know what a JCM 800 is and does. This is, you know, one of my favorite ones that I've heard, and it's lived in the studio for a long time. And then below that is the Grace, Carterson amplification, fairly new amp. Really turned my head this year. Sort of designed to put the maximum amount of gain into a rocky, fuzzy kind of tone while still maintaining clarity. And the harmonics you get out of that amp really don't sound like any other amp I have. It's this really unique, special thing. Very simple to dial. There's kind of one presence knob, 5 knobs, very simple kind of feedback loop on the back can give you a little more juice on it, but it's like a very, very cool heavy amp that can retain the clarity of your playing, which was a big selling point for me with that one. Below that, classic dual rectifier. It's a Road King. It's probably one of the more versatile dual recs. The 4-channel thing is really nice. The ability to select, you know, the different tube configurations. It's sort of like a tweaker version of your classic dual rec, but it does what you think it does. Standard probably in every metal studio to see a dual rec, so I felt like it was necessary to include in this pack too. Moving over a little bit over here, it's a Vox AC30. It's actually a 2x12 combo, but I just run it into my guitar cabs. A lot of what I do, I prefer the sound of 4x12 guitar cabs. Sometimes I'll mic that, but usually it's just running, so I'm gonna include the way I use it in the pack. Pretty classic rock tones you can pull from it. It can get heavy, it can get pretty ratty and gnarly. The dual input feature on it is very useful. Has some built-in effects, but we're not really gonna use them for this. We're just gonna keep it to the rock tones, and it's a standard in most studios, so I feel like it was important to have in this too. Below that is the VHT Pipple. It's 100 CL. This is probably the driest metal amp I have, but it's very, very aggressive. A very tight, you kind of got to earn it with your playing kind of amp, but with the right hands and like the right cab configuration, it's like a world-class amp. Some of the best metal tones I've ever heard have come from VHTs. You've probably seen Metallica use these years ago. It was a popular amp in the 90s. It's since kind of been retired. I don't see them as often, but I've always loved this amp and I've had it for a long time, so I felt like it was a cool, nostalgic one to have in this pack too. Below that is the Rev Generator 120. This is a very, very versatile 4-channel amp with a variety of tones. There's 4 channels. Each channel has a different sort of voicing to it. You can get up kind of, it's almost like a 12-channel amp in this thing. Very easy to dial in pretty much any kind of tone, clean to all the way to heavily distorted. And the high gain channel on this is a really unique tone. I really can't compare it to any other of the amps I have. It made its way into the studio because it was a different flavor, something that didn't exist even in all of this stuff. This is still kind of its own animal, which was really, really cool. Over here is a Laney Lionheart. I liken this to like the classic overdrives of Fender amps in sort of like with a little bit more of a modern touch. It does have a little more gain, which was like the selling point for me on this. It has a great clean channel. It can get very, very bitey. It goes from pristine to like really broken up indie rock to like heavy rock stuff very easily. And there's this built-in dynamics knob on it, which is sort of like a reactive presence kind of thing. Doesn't work like a tone knob per se, but it sort of adds a compressed attack to the guitar. It's a very unique thing to that amp and something that works its way into our tracking a lot because it really lets guitars shine through with the attack of the actual instrument. So I enjoy that one. That one will be in the pack. And the Krankenstein, which is below it, it's the classic Dimebag style amp. Not probably a world-renowned amp, but it's definitely a one-trick pony, but like what it does is it's very good at what it does. Extreme tones, so much gain, crazy scooped metal stuff, can lean into death metal stuff really easy. It's a great layering amp for the way, way over-the-top guitar sounds. Takes pedals well. It's like very, very gnarly, but very fun to use for the right band and the right project. And then over here, this is the 5152, probably my favorite of my 5150s. I've had that for almost 20 years now, and it's been on so many records from when I started till now. I still use it, gonna use it this weekend. So that one will be in the pack. And that kind of rounds out the 20 amps that are gonna be in this. I think this is every tone I would potentially try to dial in a studio, and it gives me, this pack gives me the ability to have all my guitar tones at my fingertips wherever I am, which is why I'm excited for you to get here too, because I think you're really going to enjoy what you get out of this. So now I want to show you the 10 speaker cabinets that we're gonna use in this ToneHub pack. It's just a variety of different sizes and speaker types. This is sort of what I pull all my guitar tones from. And I'll pair the 20 amps with these 10 cabs. It gives you the 20 by 10 thing. So to the sides are my two Mesa oversized extended cabs. They both have V30s in them. That's a 2003. I think that's a more recent one. Different years of Mesas produce different tonal qualities, even though they're technically the same cab. So I'll use them both, sometimes in tandem, sometimes for different things. They have their own strengths and weaknesses, but generally a very solid, heavy cab. Takes low end really well, very studio standard usable thing. So it's a no-brainer for the pack. Over here is an Atlas 6x12. This is a custom cab, Baltic birch, big maple binding. It's got 4 V30s and 2 creambacks in it, which I like to mic as a common pair. So I had them do a set of 4 and a set of 2 in that. A very useful utility recording cab, huge cab too. So it's very dense, very cool sounding. This is a diesel front loaded with G12s. It's my only front loaded cab, so it has a different type of push to it. I do like it for scoop tones. Very modern sounding cab. It's kind of in line with everything diesel does, but it's a fun one to record. Don't mind the snakeskin, that's just, I got a deal, you know. Below that is a Bogner Uber cab, V30 G12s, X pattern. Do love the V30s in that. It's a very present cab, full frequency, nice complement to what the Mesas do, how it's more bottom end, more scoopy. This kind of fills in mids. As a pair, they're really good to use together. As a standalone cab, it might be one of the best all-around cabs in the studio. So it's definitely a no-brainer for the pack too. This is the Zilla Super Fat Boy 2x12. It's my favorite 2x12. I've weeded out all the other ones. It has creambacks in it. It's very shreddy, bright, really cool sounding for anything like thrash metal or anything really fast. I love how tight it is. Gets a good amount of low end too for a 2x12. It's kind of taller. Maybe the bigger cab helps. I don't know, but I like it. Below that is a Marshall 1982B. Tall. It's a tall 4x12 cab. These are kind of hard to find, but if you see one, get one because they're awesome. Original Celestion V30s, the old 444 cones, and just classic Marshall tones, kind of beefed up with a bigger cab enclosure. My favorite of my Marshall cabs. I take that over the 1960 any day, and because it's kind of hard to find one, I thought it would be fun to put in the pack too, because it does have a kind of unique take on a classic Marshall tone. That's the Laney Lionheart cab with Celestion Heritage speakers, the only Heritage speakers I have. Pairs really well with that head and does a really cool mid-range breakup thing that I don't get out of some of my more modern cabs. So when it's time for any kind of heavy rock stuff, I think this thing really shines and it becomes like my go-to cab for those kind of things. Below that is an old 300 watt Sun 412 with G12s in it. Very, very thick cab. Does a scoop thing really well too. Has a ton of low end. It's a very heavy cab. Any kind of classic doom tones, heavy metal stuff. Takes pedals really well. Just a really awesome breakup in that cab too. You could go really, really loud with that one. And the big guy next to it is the 612 with the old transducer speakers in it. Kind of just a bigger version of that. Also really cool for bass, but as far as guitar tones go, it gets cranked. The mid-range breaks up in a really cool way. Vintage, heavy tones come from that. And it's just a really fun cab to play and a really unique one. I thought, haven't seen that in the plug-in world yet, so it would be fun to put into the pack. So that pretty much covers it. These are the 10 cabs I'm gonna use. Different speaker combinations, different flavors, different size cabs you can kind of get. This like covers the spectrum of everything that I would do when I'm dialing guitar tones for a record. And you know, over the years I've sort of gotten rid of other cabs and these have become the staples, so they're the 10 that are gonna make the pack.